Check, check. Can you all hear me? Loud enough? Wonderful. Well, good evening once again. Nice to see you all. Sorry we missed you last week, but looks like we have plenty safe weather tonight, and it feels terrific out here with a little bit of breeze and being in the shade. Welcome to Wright Park for another week of live musical entertainment featuring your Dodge City Cowboy Band. As advertised, tonight will actually be our Christmas in July concert, showcasing many of the band's favorite holiday pieces. Every December seems to go by in a flash, so now we can enjoy more of the warm feeling the holiday season brings tonight by sharing our music with you all. And we're thrilled to do so because it's fun music that we only get to play once a year, until now. So thanks for being here with us, and after all, there's only 163 days till Christmas. So, time to get excited about that. And we can't forget Halloween and all the other fun days, but start the countdown to Christmas tonight. Now, please rise as you're able. Direct your attention to your left to our wonderful American flag for the playing of our national anthem, and remove cover, and then we'll follow with the Cowboy Band tradition of our state song, Home on the Range. The band's first piece tonight is an arrangement for band by Robert W. Smith of a medley composed by the great Leroy Anderson, who wrote orchestral music for the Boston Pops Orchestra. Anderson was known for writing concert music with a pop quality by borrowing sounds from outside of the musical world in his compositions, such as ticking clocks, typewriters, and even sleigh bells. A Christmas Festival, originally scored in 1952, is a joyous celebration of both secular and religious music heard at Christmas time. Enjoy hearing Joy to the World, Deck the Halls, God Rest Ye Merry Gentlemen, Good King Wenceslas, Hark the Herald Angels Sing, The First Noel, Silent Night, Jingle Bells, and O Come All Ye Faithful, all in this arrangement of A Christmas Festival. All right, this next piece will tie the fun of Christmas music to the sounds and styles of music of the Old West, which is something that we're obviously known for, being the cowboy band. We love playing Western music, stuff that's recognizable from Western films, so it's nice to add a little Christmas touch to this theme. Western Christmas is a 3-movement piece, with each movement having its own Christmas carol in distinct Western style, featuring Westminster Carol, Good King Wenceslas, and Jingle Bells. Here is Western Christmas by Paul Kurnow. Thanks a lot for your patience, everyone. In between pieces, as we get our clips ready. It's pretty windy up here, but we're thankful for it, that's for sure. Our next piece is taken from a beloved animated Christmas movie that premiered in 2004. Any guesses? 2004? Animated? You've probably heard it before if you've been to one of our Christmas concerts. I think I saw someone mouth it. Polar Express, you got it. This arrangement features something for everyone, whether you're into upbeat jazz you can dance to, or a more lyrical, somber setting. We hope you've all remembered your tickets for this ride, and we'll see you at the end of selections from the Polar Express. All aboard! One of the joys about playing in an ensemble, especially a city band, a community group like this, is you get to do it as long as you're alive, and you get to make a lot of awesome relationships along the way. This summer, I had the pleasure of going and watching a couple other community band concerts and playing in a couple, and I performed with the Garden City Band. Since their schedule is offset of hours, it works out perfect. If anyone here would like to go watch their concerts, they always perform in Garden City and Stevens Park on Friday nights throughout their summer. And their last concert is this Friday night as well. So it's nice that they can come watch us and we can go watch them if we ever feel like it. And there's actually 3 of their musicians that have joined us tonight because they've come to some of our concerts before and they've been complimentary of what they've seen and heard, and we've become friends with them. So we welcome them tonight. We're glad that they're here. We have Lawrence on baritone, Kevin on trumpet, and Heidi on French horn. And Heidi, yes, Heidi actually wrote a nice themed poem about the Cowboy Band that she'd like to share with us right now. So I'll let her do that before we get ready for our next piece.
I only kind of write my poems. I think that a lot of intelligence is artificial, so that's what I have. And so when you tell it what to do, it kind of does it. So here is the ballad of Dodge City Cowboy Band. In the town of Dodge, where the tumbleweeds spin, where the wind tells tales with a toothy grin, there rose a band of the roughest kind, with brass in hand and harmony aligned. They weren't no outlaws, no cattle brand crew, but they packed more heat than the James gang knew. Trumpets and tubas and clarinets too, marching through Dodge like a musical zoo. Their boots went clink and their spurs all sang, with a 2-note beat and a cowbell clang. They didn't rustle cattle or rob the train, they just blew folks' minds with a Sousa refrain. Old Chalkley Beeson, saloon man and sage, declared, "We need music, not guns, on this stage." So he gathered the fiddlers, the horns, and the reeds, and said, "Let's give Dodge a band that it needs." He led with a pistol, no baton for this fella, conducting with charms like a Wild West Cinderella. He pointed at saxes who missed their note, and the clarinets learned fast not to gloat. They marched to D.C. in their cowboy best, with cotton shirts stretched across proud, busting chests. In boots and hats they made quite the scene, outplaying the president's own Marines. The flutes were fierce, the drummers bold, the trombone slides worth their weight in gold. The piccolo squealed like a riled-up saloon, and the bass drum rolled with a thundering boom. They played on the street, they played in the jails. They may have played while the mayor was chasing a tail. They played for the weddings and played for the wakes, and once during poker with very high stakes. Now every June by the Wright Park stage, they recreate joy from a bygone age. They dust off the cowboy boots, bright and wide, and brass up the prairie with musical pride. So here's to the band with the 10-gallon sound, where melodies gallop and rhythms astound. No shootouts, no panel, no whiskey in hand, just toe-tapping legends, the Dodge Cowboy Band.
That was awesome. Thank you, Heidi. You know this couldn't be a Christmas concert without the sound of sleigh bells, which you actually get to hear several times this evening. The band's next piece is a favorite at Christmas time anywhere you go and features the festive sound of the sleigh bells. Anytime I hear them, my childhood memories come flooding back to me of making wish lists to Santa, decorating cookies, opening presents near a tree, and so much more. Come along with us on a sleigh ride, possibly Leroy Anderson's most famous composition, and you'll know you're at the end when you hear the iconic horse whinny on trumpet. Here's Sleigh Ride. We're about halfway through the concert, so I think it's about time for our children's march. All the kids in the audience, please come forward and meet Katie. We don't have candy canes this week, but we still have our flags for you to hold and wave and march around the park with. So it's time for our children's march, so come on down. I'll introduce the next piece as they're getting ready. Don't be shy. We're going to be playing Here We Come A-Caroling. It's an old English Christmas carol and a New Year's song. It refers to the wassail, which is a cider drink, actually. The Christmas spirit often made the rich a little more generous than usual, and bands of beggars and orphans would dance their way through the snowy streets of England, offering to sing good cheer and to tell good fortune, if the owner of the residence they stopped at would give them a drink from their wassail bowl. The middle of this piece also features the beautiful melody, All Through the Night. Now we're going to play Here We Come A-Caroling, also known as Here We Come A-Wassailing. Are we ready, kids? Y'all look great. Wave those flags nice and high. Stir up some breeze for us. Good job. Wonderful job, kids. Thank you, Katie. If you're here next week, kids, and you're here for the Children's March, you get to keep the flag forever. You don't have to give it back to us at the end of the march, so make sure you come here next Tuesday night. Our next piece is an arrangement of a pop tune heard constantly on the radio around the holidays and was composed in 1970 by Puerto Rican singer and songwriter Jose Feliciano. It's a lively and heartwarming song that contains two phrases, one in Spanish and one in English. If you're looking for a good karaoke song to sing at Christmas, this one is a great go-to because there aren't too many words and it's very repetitive. I'm a karaoke nerd, I would know. It's slightly tougher than Tequila, but not quite as intimidating as Bohemian Rhapsody, so it's a good one to try out. Here's Chris Sharp's arrangement of Feliz Navidad. It's time for our weekly dissonance contest. So if you're not from Dodge City or Ford County, we would love to know if you're attending our concert tonight. Who is a Kansas resident that is not from Dodge City or Ford County? Kansas residents, that's quite a few. We have one here, one there, two there, and one there. Fantastic. We're so glad you're here. Anyone in the audience that's outside of Kansas, perhaps? Wonderful. How about let's ask you guys where you're from. Texas. Where in Texas? Houston area. Awesome. We're so glad you're here. Thank you. Green shirt right here. Michigan. Wonderful. We have a member that's traveling to see family in Michigan right now. She plays piccolo. So you guys could have had lots to talk about, I'm sure. Anyone else from out of state? Well, that's wonderful. That's such a good turnout. So hope you guys are enjoying our lovely town of Dodge City and checking out all the sights and things that there are to do here. So thank you for being here. Moving on to our next piece. Yes, thanks. If you've been to any of our Christmas concerts before in December in the mall, you may have heard this next piece. Seeing as we're called the Cowboy Band, it makes perfect sense to play a piece for Christmas in July titled Cowboy Christmas. And thankfully, Jeff Simmons' arrangement is a really fun one. I'm really glad that various composers and arrangements over the years have had fun weaving Western themes and styles with well-known Christmas and holiday songs. So here is Cowboy Christmas by Jeff Simmons. It's just impossible not to picture John Wayne in a Santa hat chasing reindeer, isn't it? When you hear something like that. This next piece needs no introduction, as most of us are familiar with the classic poem, "'Twas the Night Before Christmas." The wonderful story by Clement Clark Moore comes to life in this arrangement by J. Bocook that paints a picture musically of each line. We hope you're able to stay awake for this narration and performance of "'Twas the Night Before Christmas." "'Twas the night before Christmas when all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. The stockings were hung by the chimney with care in hopes that St. Nicholas soon would be there. The children were nestled all snug in their beds, while visions of sugar plums danced in their heads. And Mamma in her kerchief and I in my cap had just settled down for a long winter's nap. When out on the lawn there arose such a clatter, I sprang from the bed to see what was the matter. Away to the window I flew like a flash, tore open the shutters, and threw up the sash. The moon on the breast of the new fallen snow gave the luster of midday to objects below. When what to my wondering eyes should appear but a miniature sleigh and 8 tiny reindeer. With a little old driver so lively and quick, I knew in a moment it must be Saint Nick. More rapid than eagles his coursers they came, and he whistled and shouted and called them by name. Now Dasher, now Dancer, now Prancer and Vixen, on Comet, on Cupid, on Donder and Blitzen. To the top of the porch, to the top of the wall, now dash away, dash away, dash away all. As dry leaves that before the wild hurricane fly, when they meet with an obstacle, mount to the sky. So up to the housetop the coursers they flew, with a sleigh full of toys and St. Nicholas too. And then in a twinkling I heard on the roof the prancing and pawing of each little hoof. As I drew in my head and was turning around, down the chimney St. Nicholas came with a bound. He was dressed all in fur from his head to his foot, and his clothes were all tarnished with ashes and soot. A bundle of toys he had flung on his back, and he looked like a peddler just opening his pack. His eyes, how they twinkled, his dimples how merry, his cheeks were like roses, his nose like a cherry. His droll little mouth was drawn up like a bow, and the beard of his chin was as white as the snow. The stump of a pipe he held tight in his teeth, and the smoke it encircled his head like a wreath. He had a broad face and a little round belly that shook when he laughed like a bowl full of jelly. He was chubby and plump, a right jolly old elf, and I laughed when I saw him in spite of myself. A wink of his eye and a twist of his head soon gave me to know I had nothing to dread. He spoke not a word, but went straight to his work, and filled all the stockings, then turned with a jerk, and laying his finger aside of his nose, and giving a nod, up the chimney he rode. He sprang to his sleigh, to his team gave a whistle, and away they all flew like the down of a thistle. But I heard him exclaim ere he drove out of sight, "Happy Christmas to all, and to all a good night." Here's another popular Christmas song originating from Jerry Herman's Broadway musical, Mame, where it was first performed by Angela Lansbury in the 1966 production. In the musical, the song is performed after the characters find out they've lost their fortune in the Wall Street crash of 1929, and they decide they need a little Christmas to help cheer them up. The holidays can be very stressful, but it's still nice when Christmas returns each year. And now, here is a little Christmas for you all now, right this very minute. Thank you once again for being here with us this evening. We would love to see you again this Thursday, July 17th, at the 4-H Fairgrounds for the opening night of the Ford County Fair. That performance will be at 6:30, and you can even grab a free hot dog meal while you listen to us. We'll be playing about 8 pieces or so that we haven't done yet this summer. Hopefully you can join us a week from tonight as well for another concert at 7:30. And again, kids, Children's March that night. You get to keep the flag. And it's actually, that concert will have a special Dodge City Days theme as well, so get ready. This next piece that we're going to close with is actually titled A Holiday Sing-Along, and we encourage you to sing along the entire time to Deck the Halls, Jingle Bells, O Christmas Tree, and We Wish You a Merry Christmas. All easy songs, no one needs to practice. You're ready to sing out. I'll lead us in song on this final piece, and if you could please help me welcome Ben Riley to the podium, who will conduct a holiday sing-along. It's been such a joy playing Christmas music more than just once a year for you all. Thank you from all of us, and happy Christmas in July. Hopefully see you this Thursday at the 4-H Fairgrounds at 6:30. Have a good night, everyone.